Seahawks fans, wherever you may be, thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Mr. Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We've got another draft prospect show for you today, edge rushers in the 2025 NFL draft. Looking for prospect fits for Mike McDonald's defense. If you look at our current roster, you don't necessarily identify a absolute must-have need to fill on this roster, but we do have a couple of players. Boye Mafe, looking at his final year before he's up for an extension. You've got Nuasu, which is now on essentially a one-year deal. We just signed DeMarcus Lawrence. Yes, it's a 3-year deal, but you could easily move off of it if you needed to as early as next year. And so really, and you always kind of want to stock up on these sorts of things, especially if you have an opportunity cost in the draft. You've got a player available. He's the best player on your board. You wouldn't rule out taking him because your roster's stacked this year. You know, these guys play in a rotation. You just kind of bump off one of the other guys off the roster, Sharif or Tyreek Smith, etc. You put your, first or second round pick on the roster, and you just kind of work them in, and you're set for the next season. So you can never have too many pass rushers. I think that's pretty safe to say. And yeah, I mean, you're looking at a team that, Nomasu's played in, 7 games of the last 2 years combined, or maybe it's 8. It's not a lot. And so he's a guy that, I'm not sure if you go in expecting him to play, 17 games or, in a season. And DeMarcus Lawrence, your big free agent signing, is old and coming off a year in which he only played 4 games. So you can never have too many pass rushers. Hall and Mafe are great. Yeah. They're young, all of that, but go get another kid. I would agree with that. I wouldn't mind picking somebody, and we'll get into this draft class and levels of the draft and so forth, but I wouldn't necessarily mind picking up a pass rush specialist guy, a guy that wasn't necessarily a 3-down guy, but a guy you could rotate in on passing downs. Because if you take a look at DeMarcus Lawrence, I think he's great at stacking up the edge and playing the run, and he gives you a little bit of pass rush, and he cleans up pretty well. But he's not that twitchy guy that's going to really get to the quarterback now with 5 speed, and he's just never been that. He's never been that player, but he's always been able to give you a little bit more. But now later in his career, I think he's primarily just a guy that's going to play the run really well for you. So let's get into this thing. The top of the draft has got some really decent prospects. There's like 4 or 5 guys that are going to go in the top 30 to 40 picks. And they each give you a little bit of something. And I'm not sure if Seattle's going to be in this game or not at the 18th overall pick to draft an edge rusher. But there are a couple of interesting names, guys to pay attention to. It's certainly one of those things in the draft, Keith, at 18, if you stick and pick, or even if you drop back, let's say 5 spots, you're still going to be drafting off your board, best player available, and that could definitely be an edge rusher, especially if one of these guys falls a little bit. So let's talk about him. Abdul Carter is at the top. We're not going to sniff that pick. He's going to go probably 1st or 2nd overall. I would imagine 2nd in this draft.
Special though. He looks special.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
But there are a number of prospects like Jalen Walker, and Shamar Stewart is a little heavier, but also gives you the option to be able to rush from the outside as well. Mikael Williams, Mike Green really flashed at the Senior Bowl, plays at Marshall, but a smaller school, went to the Senior Bowl and really kind of held his own, and then some during the practices. He didn't play in the game. And James Pierce is out there. The kid from Boston College, Nick Scorton from Texas A&M. So a lot of different prospects in that, probably from where we pick, 15, 18, all the way back to, say, 45 or 40. There's a lot of flavors there to choose from, Keith. What would you think about the Seahawks selecting any one of those guys?
Well, a guy I really like in this is Mike Green out of Marshall. He is, 6'3", 251, but man, that first step is explosive. He just explodes past offensive linemen on his tape. And, at 4.57 speed, like, he's a guy that's going to be difficult for tackles to keep up with, but he bends so well around the edge. Just his ability to get his shoulder low, get his hand, get his arm beside the tackle and pull and just get around that edge is surprisingly advanced for a kid coming out of college. And he's at where he's at because he played for Marshall. But honestly, he is, I think he's going to be really good at the next level as a pass rush specialist. I'm not sure if he's ready to be a full or a 3-down player at this point. But as a pass rusher, I think he's going to be really damn good right away.
It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where he slots in this draft. I agree with you. I've seen him as early as getting off the board at 10 in some mocks, and I've seen him as late as early second round. And I think he's closer to that
I've seen
because he is limited
20s to
initially.
30s. Yep.
Yeah, and he's got short arms, 32-inch arms. He doesn't have that length you're really looking for. He also doesn't have the bulk or just the wingspan and all that kind of stuff to really be a 3-down guy. I think he is going to be a specialist. I think he is going to, and eventually he kind of adds to that repertoire, adds to his strength and conditioning, holds up on the edge a little bit better. But I think initially his first couple years in this league are going to be more like Boye Maffe's development for Seattle. Only Maffe really did kind of have the run stopping, which was surprising early on, and then develop more pass rush. This guy, I think it would be the opposite. Develop that pass rush early, kind of get 7-8 sacks for you on a rotation right away, and then work on that bulk and run stopping ability later on if he gets there. I still don't know for sure if he would be able to drop back into coverage, for example, or really take on blocks and
I think
work
he
through
could drop
traffic.
back into coverage. I mean, his 3-cone at 6.85 is 95th percentile. It's better than you're going to see from wide receivers and cornerbacks at times. He only
dropped back into coverage 20 times though at Marshall.
I know, because that's not how they used him.
Seasons.
They played a 4-3, and he was a defensive end. So the only time he ever dropped back was in zone blitz situations. But athletically, he's got everything necessary to do it. You were right about wingspan though. 8th percentile for wingspan. That's not going to be great. But he's 95th in the 40 and the 3-cone, and 80th percentile in the short shuttle. Like I think that athletically, he's going to be great, and I just think he's a pass rush specialist for the first year or two. And honestly, if Seattle's drafted a kid at in round 1 that's going to be a pass rusher, you want a guy that can get to the quarterback with regularity, and I feel very confident that he will.
Now, what do you think about a guy like James Pierce Jr.? So you've heard about the off the field rumblings about him as far as character. And we know that Seattle has placed a premium on that, at least in the last few years. But you can't argue with the on the field talent. 6'5", 245, ran a 4.47 40 with a 1.56 split, which is elite at that size. Great tester at the combine, really kind of lit that thing up. Natural pass rusher. He understands, his angles and leverage, and he was very productive. Had over 110 quarterback pressures during his college career. But you've got to answer those questions. But I think he's going to give somebody some value where I think he's going to be available in the draft, which is somewhere in the 20s probably, or early second round, very early.
He might drop further than that. At least
Depending.
on Seattle's board, because they made some mistakes during the Pete Carroll era with drafting low character guys, and it bit them. And then they made that big shift and said, no, we're only drafting high character players. And I know that we have a different coaching staff now, but we have the same general manager who learned those same lessons at the same time. I would see it being very difficult for Schneider to draft Pierce where you would need to draft him and to get him. And so he would have to drop to 50 or 52 for Seattle to consider him. But he's a just physical talent. He's a guy that you would consider at 18. But I just don't see it in Seattle.
No, I agree with you. I think, I just wanted to talk about the talent level. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm not in a position to answer those off the field issues and what that means specifically for the Seahawks. But certainly a talent that you would consider, and he may not be on their board at all. They may just have him off. One of the guys I think that will be on the board that we can talk about that kind of reminds me of the Mike Green thing, but I think is a safer pick overall is Donovan Iziru Aku, the edge rusher out of Boston College. He's 248, 6'2", little on the short side, but he does have the length, 34-inch arms, 82 3/8-inch wingspan, excellent 40 at 4.62, which is fast enough, 86 percentile on the shuttle, over 90 percentile on the 3-cone at 6.94, which is elite. Which shows his burst and ability to have that agility to work through traffic and be a hunter. And I just think that he would be the character guy that would fit well in Mike McDonald's defense and could be a guy that they could conceivably, for me, trade back off 18, and he would be available somewhere in the late 20s. Or early 30s if they wanted to come back and get a player. Say they were at 50, decided to make a move, and he was hanging around at 40 to 45, and they just really wanted a player like this. I could see them, making some sort of move. But with the roster that is currently constructed, he may not be the priority.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, but this guy's got great burst. He's going to work out really well as a guy that's coming up off that edge. People will see 6'2" and be like, think of it as leverage, their ability to get low. This guy's, the flexibility that he shows, hips, ankles, and the bend that he has to get around that corner at that speed, he's going to be productive at the next level.
And he's got a great toolbox.
He's going to get around that corner. And honestly, man, you could do far worse. I like him. Really good.
He's one of my favorite edge rushers, especially considering where I think he's going to go in the draft. I think he's going to be a great value. I don't know that he's going to be there at 50 or 52, to be completely honest. There's too much of a premium on this position. So I don't see him getting much past 35, to be completely honest. That's why I don't think I would hate it if Seattle were to move off 18 or even at 18, but move off of 18 into the 23 to 28 range and take a guy like this. I think that would make a lot of sense for them. Okay. After that range, there's a few guys. Jack Sawyer, I'm not enamored with, but he's a very productive guy. Obviously at Ohio State, did a lot of work there. Very productive over a few different years. 6'4", 260 pounds, 4'6", 40, 144 career tackles, 23 sacks, tons of pressures, can set the edge for you. He's a strong guy, has kind of a bull rush move. So a little bit more of a point of attack guy, a guy that's going to push you back as opposed to try to get around you. Although he does have the ability to, with the agility and the speed, he's just not quite as advanced yet on just pass rush moves and counter moves and so forth. He's more of a value guy as far as being able to be scheme diverse, moving in and out, and a stronger guy, a guy that's already developed as far as play strength and so forth.
Yeah, see, he's kind of the opposite of some of the guys that we've been talking about who are like pass rushers first, and then you can develop them. He's an edge setter. He's a strong side guy who will do well against the run, and you hope that he develops some pass rush ability, which he can. I don't see it. I don't see evidence in his tape that he's going to have that bend to get around the corner with regularity, but he also is young and it's you can develop it. So it's one of those things where, he's a guy who's got a fairly high ceiling. And so he's just not up near it. And so he's going to have to develop that as far as being a pass rusher. But as a guy, first, second down, he can do it. Like he's got that extra, that size, that strength to be your strong side edge setter. And a lot of these guys we're going to talk about today don't. They're weak side, or they're just pass rush specialists. So there's value there. I personally would pass given Seattle's roster and where you're going to need to take him, and then just go get someone who's got a little bit more a little bit more oomph in the pass rush, because that's
so. Who do you want to talk about in that bucket?
Let's see. In that bucket,
what do you think of Princely Umanmielen or Malin?
Yeah,
it's a mixed bag for him.
Yeah, it is.
I get it.
Someone I hadn't talked or thought about bringing up simply because I didn't want to pronounce the name, and you did great with it. So,
well, he's 6'4", 244. He's not quite as straight line speed fast as you want, but he's got that burst. He's got the three cone stuff. He's got all the other. He's got a 38-inch vertical. He played at the Senior Bowl. I think Seattle met with him. So he's definitely a guy that's on their radar that they've considered. Don't know how that went, but he's toolsy. I'm just not sure. And there's a reason though that he's going to be in the range where Seattle's picking in the second round. Even though he's got all that physical attributes you want, 6'4", 244, 38-inch vertical, all that kind of stuff. But there's just, to me, a lack of urgency in his game, or desire, or whatever you want to call it. It's just, he's not consistent play after play at the college level, which makes you question whether he's going to be consistent at the NFL level.
Yeah, when he is on and he gets that burst off the edge, he looks like an elite player. But there's too many plays on his tape where he essentially just stacks the tackle in front of him and stays there, and it's like he's taking the play off. He's like, okay, if the guy comes to me, I'll make a play, but I'm just going to stack the tackle and wait. And I don't like that. I don't like that. But that might be a coaching thing where they're asking him to do that, because it happens a lot on his tape.
That is true.
So it might be I don't know enough about Ole Miss to evaluate that. Like, I don't know their scheme. Like, I don't watch them play. I just look at individual players, in the scouting process. So it might be something that he's being asked to do. But without that knowledge, personally, I see it looks like he's taking plays off, taking too many plays off. So
I
I
think
would,
it could translate into a fitness situation where he just needs to increase some play strength and stamina and that sort of thing. So it's hard. That's where the advanced stats or advanced scouting come into play in a player like this. I think, A, was he asked to do that within the scheme, and B, is it training, athleticism? Is it coaching? Is it stamina? Is it a will to want to do these things? And it's a hard equation sometimes with these players. What do you think of Brady Swinson?
Sorry, was set up to bring up another player.
Okay.
But no, Brady Swinson. Let me find my notes on him.
LSU 6'4", 255, 4.80 40. So not huge straight line mover, but a guy that's going to be available in potentially like the 82 range in the third round for Seattle that may be able to give you some value. I think that's where the realistic part of me in Seattle's equation would want to take an edge guy in this draft. And because there's a few there in that range that are going to, I think, do very well as being specialists in the NFL, and he would be kind of one of them.
I'm a little
not as athletic
worried
as
with
you
him,
want, but
yeah, his athleticism. His 3-cone is 68th percentile. That's it's above average, but his 40 time at 56 is right at average. Right, his short shuttle at 67% is just above. There's nothing elite about him athletically, and so that doesn't mean he's going to be a bad player or anything. It just means it's harder to look at him and say like, oh, that's going to be how he wins at first while he's developing. But what he does have are some really good counter moves to his moves. He is not a one-trick pony when it comes towards pass rush moves to get to the quarterback. He's going to make life difficult for tackles because he's got great ability to burst up field, so they're going to want to jump out. But he can come back inside across their body and surprise them. He can also turn speed into power really well, which, you get a guy on his reaching too far with his lead foot, and you can push him off balance if you can do that. So a lot of good stuff that he does with his hands. I think he's going to be productive early. It's just a matter of, is his ceiling high enough to justify a high pick? And I think a guy like him, if he's available at 82, that's a great value.
I agree. I think you could consider. Go ahead.
I would say he's going to be good there. And even if he doesn't ever develop more than that, you're still getting a player that's productive. And so I'm totally okay with him in that range. If you're going to want to pick him above that, like in the second round, that kind of stuff, I would go after a player with a higher ceiling. So you get a guy that might, develop into a Pro Bowler. But he's going to be productive early on.
Yeah, I would say that he's going to be on Seattle's radar, and I think that they would consider him on their board just because of the way that he plays the game, the way that he's a smart guy, the way that he understands the entire defense, not just his own position. His playing strength right away is an asset. His first step explosion is really good. The way that he kind of is a nasty finisher, all that kind of stuff kind of plays into the way that they would like their defenders to play and to establish an identity. I think he fits into that. And it just really depends. I think that, his ideal fit is in a 3-4 defense. I think it's in, standing up, rushing the passer initially. And then you work him into dropping into coverage. You work him into, to rushing the passer. I think he's able to stop the run better now than he is to get forward and rush the passer, but he can get there. But I think you put him in the right scheme, which I think Seattle's is for him. And he operates really effectively and efficiently for Mike Macdonald. So, and it'd be one of those things where you just work, he wouldn't have to play a lot in his first year, especially in that 3rd round slot. You just kind of work him in, if you battle injuries or whatever, or he can play a series now and again. I think he gives you some pretty decent value. So I think it would be under consideration. What was the other player you were going to talk about?
Josiah Stewart out of Michigan.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Same sort of range with those guys.
He's only 6'1", like 245. So he's undersized. 6th percentile height.
7/8 inch arms.
Yeah. And so you're going to look at that and you're going to like, okay, but 79th percentile in his 40. And the agility and stuff shows up on tape, but what really shows up is his first step, and that he's upfield before most tackles can get their foot out on the on their kick slide, and that's going to be really hard for tackles to block without help. He's just super quick on that, gets around the corner really nicely. Undersized. He's going to be a liability on running downs.
Maybe. I mean, I think he's got
early in his career. I think
he's got an amazing motor. Like he will hunt down. He's a hunter. I think that he's already got a lot of different pass rush moves. I think he's surprisingly stout at the point of attack.
What he's really good at is
scheme diversity.
He's really good at sniffing out screens. You see him come up field and then just put the brakes on and stop and back up into screen lanes because he recognizes what's going on. He's just got that wherewithal and has blew up so many screens this last year. You could just look at the USC game in particular. I think he had like 4 times where he blew up screenplays. And for a guy whose job is to get to the quarterback, like that's just a lot of it's just smart play. It's just the awareness to recognize that this isn't what, like they're doing something to me. Like they're trying to take me out of the play by letting me go free and dropping off, and just being smart about the way he plays. I think he's going to be great as a guy who comes in on passing downs and be as a rotational guy early on, and is just going to make some people look really smart when they draft him.
Yeah, and the guy, he's played at Michigan, bonus, and super productive, like 30 career sacks, 46 tackles for loss. That's a playmaker. So you can't now you can talk about the physical attributes not being ideal in the NFL, but there are plenty of examples of guys outperforming their draft slot and outperforming their physical limitations, quote unquote, because coaches know how to use players and put them in positions to be successful. I think Mike Macdonald's definitely one of those.
Yeah.
And he's a playmaker, and you can't have too many of those on your roster, guys that just know how to play football. And he's one of them. I would be excited at that pick, actually. That would be kind of a fun pick, I think, for the Seahawks to have. Another guy like in that same range is Kyle Kennard, South Carolina edge, 6'4", 255, 4.73 40, not outstanding, good enough. 34-inch arms, which is a little longer. 1.63 split, which is not special, but it's decent. Again, super productive, right? So 54 games, 32 starts, 143 tackles, 37 tackles for loss, 24 sacks. he had 10 quarterback hurries, forced 3 fumbles, recovered 2 of those, academic All-American. There's a lot to like about a player like this who's got a full toolbox, understands all of his pass rush moves and counter moves. He's got just really impressive football IQ, I think, is the big thing about him and why he's a player that would be on Seattle's radar.
Yeah. Oh, no, I love him. I think he just where he fits as far as his draft like range, as far as where he's being predicted versus what you're getting, is like tremendous value. I would totally like that. A guy that has me intrigued, but I'm not sure scheme fit, is Ashton Gillette out of Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
Galati.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's 6'3", 264 at the combine, but was 272 as a playing weight. But runs, his 40 time of 4.65 is good. His vert of 36.5 inches is really good. But he is bigger, and that's usually not a not a bad thing. But
in
if
a
he gets
3-4,
back up to in a 3-4, if he gets back up to 275, that's probably not going to be a benefit for him, because of his occasionally he's going to be asked to cover, and that's going to make it harder. But he's, like I said, he's a 4-3 defensive end, I think, and who will be great there. But he is in that same size range as Dre Jones, and Dre Jones probably should have been a 5 tech in Seattle's system, but they moved him to outside linebacker and let him do some things. And as a guy, he's got that explosiveness, that power that you just don't expect from that position, where you're used to seeing, these are twitchy guys that explode around the edge. And instead he comes in with the ability to push tackles backwards, and with that bull rush and just that power, and the ability to hold up at the point of the attack better than most, and does so with a really elite 40 time for a guy his size. And so very intriguing. I don't know what you'd do with him in Seattle. I think you'd ask him to keep his weight down and play outside linebacker, basically do what they did to Dre Jones. But you could also see a situation where you go, well, you know what? He played it at 275. Let's let him get back up there and move inside and play 5 tech. And get up after the quarterback with his hand on the ground. I could see that as well, especially with that, that speed, that burst, his ability to surprise some people around the edge, and also the power to come back inside. So just a very intriguing player overall.
Yeah, I like him. I think that you kind of described that perfectly, which could be intriguing for Seattle. We know Mike McDonald likes that scheme diversity and being able to move guys around, disguise, etc. So a guy that can do multiple things, even with weight discrepancies as far as traditional weights that you want to see players come in, that would be interesting. Another guy that's really interesting for me, I like him as a football player, just a football player, is Femi Oladejo out of UCLA. 6'3", 259, 4.7 40, had a 36.5 inch vertical. He's long, 33 and 3/8 inch arms with an 82 inch wingspan. Had a couple sacks at the Senior Bowl. Met with Seattle there. I like him because he came from being an off the ball linebacker, put on a little bit of weight, filled out a little bit, ended up being an edge rusher at UCLA. But he's got that background. He's got that vision, the progressions, the play diagnosis, all that kind of stuff. So he's conversely,
and the coverage ability,
coverages, stops the run really well, gets sideline to sideline, has that instinct of a linebacker, and now you're putting him on the edge. So you've you've got a few things you can do with him in the defense with a player that understands multiple positions. And I think Mike McDonald will be very intrigued by this player. Plus, he just plays hard. He's strong at the point of attack. He's got really strong hands. And I like it. I mean, if he was there at, say, 92 or even 123, I think is where we're at after that. A guy like that would be very intriguing to me.
At 123, that's value. I think he reminds me a lot of Boye Mafe. And that I think it's going to take him a year to put
I was going to say
everything
Derek Hall.
Okay. Yeah, but again, same thing. I think it's going to take him a year to put everything together before he's ready to just explode and be really good at the next level. I think it's not going to be an instantaneous transition.
I agree.
But the ceiling is really high. And if you get him, at 123 in the fourth round, like that's just crazy value. And I would love that.
Yeah, I think, and why is a guy like this, where he's toolsy, he's not a tweener, he's really, he's 250, 259. Why would teams value him less than some of the other guys we've been talking about? Is it just that developmental curve where he's a specialist, but he's better at stopping the run now than getting upfield to the passer? Or is there something about his game that just doesn't translate to the NFL?
I think one, he's got a ways to go to reach his ceiling. Like this development's needed. This is a draft and develop kind of guy. You're not going to get a lot in year one. That's going to drop him down. And I think the other part is the strength of his game is run stopping, not pass rushing. And for an edge player, getting up and rushing the passer is more valuable. And so teams are going to go after those pass rushers first, and guys like him will slide a little bit. And if you're Seattle and you've got 4 guys in the rotation, you have time to let this guy develop. You've got because he's going to be the 5th person on your depth chart. He's going to mostly be playing special teams on game day. And that's okay, because a year from now he'll come in and that development will be there and he'll be great. And for other teams, you just can't afford to wait that long. They need somebody now.
I just like the physicality that he brings. Like, to me, it's a Mike McDonald pick. If he,
the guy that played middle linebacker but is an edge.
Yeah. And he just flies around. He plays with a lot of instincts and just physicality. I think that the defense wants to have. They've talked about it. They want to establish that identity. If you go out and you look at the type of players that they acquired during free agency, guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, these are physical guys that like to be enforcers, guys that like to take it to offenses, not allow offenses to take it to you. And this guy fits that mold. He's just kind of that alpha kind of dog that you want to have in your defense. And he takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of time to mold all those things, teach those things. We've got some great teachers on this defense, and I would love to have him. Yeah. Just love to have him.
I like the versatility that he brings, because he's your edge rusher, but if you want to blitz Jones up the middle, but not overcommit to the pass, you could totally drop him back into zone, or have him pick up the tight end or running back in coverage, like where he's not even rushing the passer at all. Like that's not even his assignment. And he can totally do those kind of things. It just gives you more options where you're still only bringing 4. Right, you're only bringing 4 pass rushers. One of them just happens to be Jones up the middle, and you're dropping your okay,
I got to stop you.
Edge player back.
You talking about Ernest Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Ernest Jones. Okay.
Because if you bring him up the middle rather than one of your edge rushers, you can create where you're overloading the blocking, where you have more guys coming on one side than they have blockers. Free people up.
I would say too that this would be a player in the mold of Uchenna Nwosu, and could be available next year to replace him. Like you would have his replacement on the roster, and you would be able to learn from him, because this is kind of the same sort of player to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've got a player that I want to ask you about, because you watched the Senior Bowl practices and everything way more than I was able to. And it's impossible to get Central Arkansas tape. But David Walker.
Yeah.
Guy that, you look at his 40 time at 4.69 is pretty good. But as an edge player, 263 is great. His shuttle is okay, but his 3 cone's better. Just overall, like athletically, he's interesting but not elite.
I would be scared of him now. He had an okay Senior Bowl. I thought he was average there. He's a little undersized as far as length. His wingspan is only 77 inches, Keith. His arms are only 31 7/8. His short shuttle was in the 28th percentile. Inches and
the wingspan is 86th percentile.
Yeah,
26 reps at the bench for his position is 81st percentile. So
right.
I think he's interesting.
It depends on what you value at that spot. His hands are small at 9 1/4. His vertical was 61%. His 3 cone was 45th percentile. Broad jump was 56th. It just doesn't show a lot of explosion there. But obviously the guy is a playmaker. He was the conference player of the year at Central Arkansas in that conference 3 years in a row. He's got 66 tackles, 21 tackles for loss, and 12 sacks in 2022. And he played with that sort of production in 23 and 24 as well. So the guy's has that production, and you can't argue with that. Now, I didn't go back and watch a ton of tape of him. Saw him at the Senior Bowl. He was okay. There were definitely guys that were able to just kind of take care of him, like Gray Zabel and stuff. Just kind of held him like he was a nothing out in front of him. So he really didn't win any reps that I saw during practice week. I think that he's, one thing that would attract him to Seattle would be the way that he plays. Like he's kind of a dog. He plays like, he finishes plays. He plays to the end of the whistle. He always is in on tackles. He's around the ball. So you want a guy like that, a guy that has good instincts, but lacks the physical attributes that I think you would prioritize if you were Seattle. Just from a pure pass rush specialist, I don't know that he's like, he would be the 5th guy on the roster for sure, but I think he would always be like the 5th guy. Like, I don't know that there's enough upside there for him to be your top 2 pass rusher on your roster in any given year. I think he's always going to be kind of a marginalized player because of the limitations, physicality limitations on him. But I could be wrong. He could be a guy that develops, but you just can't teach those things. And the agility is what it is. And I just think that he ends up getting swallowed up at 6'2" and doesn't have enough sand in the pants, if you will, to set an edge and defend the run. So he's really only going to be on the field for you in pass rush downs, and you've got other options.
So one of the things that and this has nothing really to do with him so much as just the nature of college football right now, he was so productive for 3 straight years at Central Arkansas. And in the world of NIL, Central Arkansas cannot compete with anybody, any of the the big dogs as far as paying him to stay. Why was he there at Central Arkansas for those 3 years and
and
not
didn't
at
enter the transfer portal.
not at LSU
Right.
for 2024? Like, why did he end up not basically getting paid to go to one of the bigger programs? It's just it's I don't have an answer, and I'm not saying that as a negative for him, because he might have been like, no, I made the commitment, I'm staying, and it didn't matter, because I don't know, but it's just an interesting subplot to the current nature of college football, and guys that
I
are
think
that
he's
good
actually,
just,
I would like him better if he was slightly smaller, and as far as weight, and had just a little bit more agility. You could almost see playing him as an off the ball linebacker or a weak side linebacker in a 4-3. I don't know that he's a 3-4 guy. If he was just a pass rush specialist and he had the attributes that you really want and covet at that spot, and he had that really big upside, I think that he could play in a 3-4 as your pass rush specialist, kind of a Boye Mafe kind of a role.
mm-hmm.
I think where he's at now, he's got more off the ball linebackers skill set where you're going to want to drop him back into coverage a little bit more and not have him moving forward to the quarterback as much. And I'm not sure there's a spot on Seattle's defense for a player like that. I think that's more of a 4-3 guy.
Yeah. So, okay. Next guy I want to talk about before we, because we're getting kind of down near the end of the list here, at least from where I'm at, is I think it's pronounced K Robinson out of Alabama, but it's Quue. So my brain wants to say Q Robinson, but I think it's K Robinson. 6'4", 243, so definitely undersized up front. But then you start looking at his 80th percentile in the 40, wingspan at 93, arm length is there at 74th percentile, just gets upfield extremely well. Absolutely, just toolsy, athletic, elite athleticism, the ability to do all sorts of different things. Played special teams and was really, really good at that level. Also was never injured, apparently, at any point in his college career, which is crazy to me. But he seems raw. Like he doesn't have, like he needs to develop, a better plan in his pass rush and where he can set people up and just things like that, where he seems like he's a guy that's going to be an early day 3, 4th or 5th round type of player with a really high ceiling, just simply because of the crazy athleticism. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess, I didn't watch any film on him. I didn't get that far down on my list. I've got him on the big board. He's listed at 181 overall. Obviously an Alabama guy. You then ask, okay, 6'4", 243, ran a 4.6 40. You look at all the other physical attributes, the wingspan, the other things. You're wondering why he didn't work into their rotation more, gain more experience, have better production, et cetera. So you'd have to kind of look into that. Overall, I mean, he's got the attributes, right? He's got the bend, he's got the twitch, he's got the versatility. I think he was a former safety. I'm reading in the notes. And so you take a look at that sort of thing is perfect for this range in the draft, right? You're looking for a player that does one thing really well. Okay, he's twitchy, he's an edge guy, he's got the forward ability to get to the quarterback. So you bring him in to kind of do that. Maybe he's your 5th guy on the roster. We've talked about this before. And you develop him. You spend some time in the weight room You coach him up, you teach him some other skill sets. He's obviously had a safety background. Maybe he can drop back into the coverage for you and do a few things that way. So you just kind of give him a little more and more overall. And then in year 2, you kind of see what you've got. That's, to me, would be a player like Q Robinson.
Yeah. Is it Q? Or
That's
K?
what I'm thinking. I don't know. I would say Q.
Okay. I don't know. To me, he's really intriguing, and getting a guy with that much athleticism upside on day 3, you just got to go, yes, please, because the worst case scenario is that he basically is a special teams contributor, which he can do and he's going to be good at. But the best case scenario is that he reaches that ceiling, which is really high. He's got a long way to get there. It's a low floor, high ceiling. But if he gets there, then you've got a guy that has tremendous ability and talent. It's just because he's so athletic. I just think that for a day 3 guy, it's kind of ideal.
Yeah. A couple other day 3 guys, don't have a tremendous amount of notes on these guys, but Baron Sorrell, the edge defender from Texas, 6'4", 260. Ran a 4.68 40, kind of a early down run defender guy. Mentioned lunch pail player, pass rush upside, still needs to develop that. A guy like Tyler Barron out of Miami, 6'5", tremendous length, 260, ran a 4.6 240. Really plays hard, runs with some dog in him. Seattle's going to be attracted to something like that. And that's it. I have some names and so forth further down the list than that. But
another guy the only other guy that I want to talk about here would be Fadil Diggs out of Syracuse, 6'4", 257. This is a guy, when you look at his tape and everything, he is he gets straight up the field and gets after the quarterback around the edge and does nothing else. But when he does get around that edge, he is, a guy that, can get there and can you develop him into doing other things? Probably, because the athleticism is there. But right now, he's a one-trick pony but he does it really well. And so if you're looking for a pass rush specialist that's going to come in, 2-minute drill type situations, when you've got a lead, and the other team's going to throw the ball on every down, having a guy that can come in and just put pressure on the quarterback on every play that he's in there is a valuable thing, even if he can't do anything else. So I think as a 6th round pick, maybe a 7th, if you're lucky, but probably more of a 6th round pick. I think that it's the type of player that you would be looking for.
Yeah. So what are the chances Seattle drafts a edge rusher, like a specific edge rusher player in this draft, considering our current roster?
I think it's pretty high, but because you have 10 picks and because you can never have enough pass rushers, but I don't think that it's high that they pick one early. I'd say that probably 82 is the earliest I could see them taking an edge rusher. 123 is probably more likely because you've got 4 guys above them. Anyone you take is going to be 5th on your depth chart. And that's, you don't want to take, you don't want to spend a 2nd round pick on a guy that's not going to see the field.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I could see them taking a mixed blend guy like Shamar Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
Now Shamar came in and is listed at 290, but he's tested lighter than that. Runs a 4.59 40 at 290 pounds.
Yeah. See, he's a guy. If he's sitting there at 18, I think you run to the podium.
Right.
I've seen him
and
going
this is the
in
guy
top
that you
10.
can move all over the plate. Now we're just talking about specialty guys in this conversation, but a guy like that can also do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's worthy of kind of having that. And a guy like Mikael Williams, who we didn't really talk about too much, 6'5", 260, if he's there, they may consider him. I think he's okay. To me, I think that he's more of and I'm talking about Mikael Williams, he's more of a guy that can play the run better, and as opposed to getting to the quarterback at this stage. And I think that I think he's overvalued in the draft. I think he's going to get picked higher than his current skill set says that he will. But he played at Georgia. He's super athletic. He's super long. Those guys are hard to find, and he's probably going to be able to convince the team to come up and get him. And I'm not sure if that's Seattle or not, and maybe it is. But another guy like Mike Green, you said maybe they'd take Mike Green. I think the only way that they take Mike Green is if they trade back off 18 and he's still hovering around at 25 or 28, something like that. Yeah. And he's the best player on their board, and they just go get a player like that and stack him up for 2026. Because he could take reps from, say, Derek Hall or Boye Mafe. If Boye Mafe has kind of a marginal camp or a year, you could see a player like Mike Green come in and outwork him or motivate him maybe to be more consistent. But a player like that would be interesting. Or if they evaluate James Pierce and the off the field stuff and the character concerns are overblown and they've done their homework and they feel like he's a player, he'd be a special player available at the top end of the third or second round that they may come back up and get if all of that cleared with the team.
Yeah.
And he was just one of those special players that, his talent alone said that he's a top 10 talent, but he's available at 35 or whatever, and they come up off 50 and combine another pick and go get a player like that. That wouldn't shock me. But
who was the defensive end, like 5-tech type guy that the Seahawks drafted, who had like domestic violence concerns? He played really well, but then eventually they traded him to Kansas City.
Oh, God, I just had his name in my head. It just went away. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
But yeah, because he was taken in the second round, but this is a guy with talent that said, top 15 pick, but the off-field stuff was like scary. And so he dropped.
Which never materialized really.
Not
as
during
far as
Frank
it affecting
Clark.
his play. Frank Clark. It never affected the way that his ability to contribute. I'll say that.
He never ended up like not being available because of that stuff. And some of that stuff was there, and then some of it disappeared, but then some of it came back later on. And so there was always some concern there, but he was an elite talent available in round 2 because of off-field stuff. And there's a point you get low enough in the draft where the elite talent makes the risk worthwhile. And that's what Frank Clark ended up being. And this is the type of situation too. If this is a guy that should be drafted in the first round and off-field stuff, but at some point, right, the risk becomes worth it because you're going to get a guy with that much talent. Where's that point for you? Like that, and that's really what it comes down to for every team. Where's that point where you start to consider it?
Interesting. Okay. That finishes up this conversation. I think the next show, Keith, we're going to do a mock draft. So probably the second to last mock draft we do before the draft, right?
Yeah. We'll do one right before.
And this one will kind of be the most complete. I don't think we haven't assigned any particular rules to this, so it's kind of a free for all as you see fit to make your draft, whatever it is. And to me, this is kind of where it gets you try to get realistic. Like you've gone through free agency now, you understand the players in the draft at multiple position groups now really well. And you can really kind of see how the draft falls depending on who you take first. Like, do you take the offensive guard first? How does that make the other draft work for you or not? And so on and so forth. So it becomes a little bit more of an interesting game overall to do these. And we're still talking about, in the draft, I think, and these mock drafts and the way that we talk about players and roster building and construction and so forth on our show is it's not so important to focus on the actual player that we draft or we assign to a certain spot in the draft or whatever. I think the more important thing to think about if you're a draft guy or you really want to get interested in the draft and how the team does this and how we evaluate things is what kind of players are we talking about? What kind of players, because, you may have your eye on a player, an offensive guard at 18, but you can get that kind of player. Now, maybe it's 85% of that player you could have at 18 that you're going to get at 123, but you're looking for the same kind of players. So really your draft board is malleable and the type of player overall is really what you want to be focusing on, because those guys can be available at all different levels of the draft. So really kind of depending on how, and you're competing with 31 other teams for these same players. And so it really just depends on how the draft falls, where everyone lines up on your board. If you draft a corner here, you may not draft a corner later, which, so if you're lucky at predicting mock drafts, you might get 1 or 2 picks out of 10. And that's really just based on luck and more than anything else, that those players were available. The team viewed you, those players in similar value that you did, and you picked them, and so did they. But usually it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, though, you and I had one, like we had a draft where you and I picked like 4 or 5 out of 8 correctly, which was crazy.
Yeah, I think that was the Abe Lucas draft.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, where we had Abe Lucas and a couple other guys on there. Yeah, pretty interesting. All right, let's get out of here. We'll do that draft tomorrow and get that up on the podcast website and YouTube right away as well. So you can find Keith at Myers NFL at Blue Sky. You can find me at NW Seahawk. You can find the show on your favorite podcast platforms and our YouTube channel, and leave a comment. Been getting lots of comments lately, so that's been great. And we will chat at you soon. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.